Thank you for your patience. Now let's begin the panel discussion. The session is moderated by Joichi Ito. Okay, let me introduce the panelists one more time. So, from the Sega co-founder and CEO, Ms. Arisa Toyosaki. And co-founder and CEO of Webacy, Ms. Maika Isogaya. QuantStamp, head of Japan and an APAC, Mr. Kei Oda. CEO and co-founder and SOWAC, Dr. Vishal Punwani. So 4 panelists and Mr. Ito. Okay, Mr. Ito, floor is yours. So for this panel, should I speak in English?
So I think one of the commonalities is that all of you work with organizations and communities and things like that. And I think that one of the biggest differences and the keys to success of any project is the community. That includes customers, includes teams and staff and things like that. And I think Kei-san talked about it too, but sort of the DAO sort of governance is also really key. And I think it's an evolving thing, but I don't know if we want to first talk about, what a successful project community looks like. I mean, I know some of you actually, that's your business right now, but what are, and you can just feel free to jump in, but what are the attributes like of let's say, a good community? What's key, both as a participant or?
Sure. So Sega is still a very early project. So we actually are not completely a DAO yet. Being a complete DAO is on our roadmap. And I think we took the approach of starting out centralized and moving into eventual decentralization. This is so that at the very beginning, our product decision making is fast and our organizational brand compilations and communication is streamlined. But in the interest of decentralized finance, we do believe that in the future, it makes more sense to have a community-driven decision-making approach. And we will start off by allowing our community to make smaller decisions of the protocol and then eventually larger decisions. I think a existing DAO that does this really well is Curve Finance, which is one of the very original DeFi protocols that offers AMM solutions. And Curve does this really well where each member can vote on the proposal, but the proposals are very frequent and very engaged. If a DAO doesn't have enough people voting on a proposal, it doesn't really make sense. And so building that engagement in the decision making is a really key part of any DAO.
Yep, and just for the Japanese,
may I speak in Japanese? So, proposal is made, and the token holder votes on them. And DAO has different voting rules, but the regular listed company has shareholders meetings and item of agendas created by the company side, and the audience or the investor can vote. But in case of DAO, anyone can propose and also vote. So you don't have to have a shareholders meeting. You can just continuously work on it. So half of them is like customers. It's like ENS. And as Ariyoshi-san said, that the number of the community, when the community is so small, even the one individual can have a big voice.
Yeah, that's a great question because there are communities with 100,000 members that only have 50 people voting on a proposal. And that is just statistically an insignificant representation of the entire community. And so I think any communities that have thousands or tens of thousands of vote, I think creates a very significant decision making. But I think if you want to be a DAO from day one, you can have a very small size community, but like in a 90% engagement rate. And I think that makes sense as well.
And there are also protocol politicians who get votes. I think one of the things that I think is a great innovation that came out of liquid democracy is the idea of being able to delegate your votes to other people, either entirely or by topic, so that you can take the engaged people and have them be somewhat emergent representatives, right?
Yeah, ENS did a really good job of that.
Yeah, yeah. Anybody else on what's a good community?
I can go maybe. Actually, QuantStamp is not, as far as I know, ever going to be a DAO. We're an infrastructure company, so I think that we're here to support DAOs, if anything. But one thing I will say about like any company, which has struck me the most when I joined QuantStamp, we have this motto called proof of caring. And proof of caring is anything from doing favors for people just because they need help, or helping your clients because further down the line they may become paying customers, or anything. And the way we always operate is to give, and then maybe we'll get at some point in the future. And I think that for decentralized systems where you have to incentivize people, maybe it's maybe sometimes they give too quickly, people take it, they sell, and then they're gone. And so I think long-term incentivization is pretty quite difficult. For us, like we live by that motto, and so anything we do is built around strengthening the network that surrounds QuantStamp. So I think that that's an interesting thing. And then going to the DAO model, maybe it's like a hybrid of proportional representation, which is how many tokens you have, but also some kind of reputation score, where if you are an active participant, it doesn't matter if you only have a very small fraction of the tokens. You can actually make an impact that way. So that might be like a hybrid DAO model, which maybe becomes more popular over the future.
And I guess it's easier to be long-term in a bear market, right?
Well, the best products are built in a bear market. So I think that hopefully the builders out there will be busy for the next year or so.
And Vish, you sort of were negative on the idea of people having multiple projects. And this isn't just because your business model is about people showing up at the office, right? I mean, like, can you unpack that a little bit? And then do you have a theory? Because I think that right now we use Discord, and you go into Discords to do diligence on companies, and you sort of participate in a bunch of different things. And so one question is maybe unpack the single entity thing a little bit more, and also just whether what you think about Discord, and does it really help to be there in your in your virtual office, and how does it help?
Yeah, no, it's a great set of questions, and I don't want to give you the wrong impression. I think like the single entity thing is more about like if you want to have like a really, really meaningful impact day after day after day on an organization, then I think you need to be prepared to spend a significant amount of time with that organization. And so I think that you can definitely contribute to lots of different organizations, but as a general rule, probably ones that you spend the most time with are the ones that are going to benefit from your touch the most. I just think of it, I don't even have kids, so I don't know why I'm making this analogy, but I think of it as like raising kids, probably, from maybe what my parents tell me. Like, you're not going to, let's say they spent a lot more time with my brother than they did with me, and I can see, no, just kidding. Yeah, so I think like you can definitely spend time with lots of different organizations and have a meaningful impact. It depends on what you're expected to do. So if the expectation is that you're, say, a VC or an advisor, and you need to come in there and kind of like diagnose and spot things that are broken, or maybe things that need a little bit of your bump, then that's probably totally fine. But if you're a builder or an executor, then really it's just you have 40 hours a week, or you have however many hours you want to put into your work every week, and I just don't know if the math adds up for you to have as meaningful an impact as maybe if you're just focused in one area. That probably just came from personal learning on my side versus anything else, and I don't know the answer, but that's just my hypothesis.
And I guess when we played World of Warcraft, you weren't supposed to be in multiple guilds so much, right?
That's the thing.
Yeah, it's a game. Well, a lot of this is also, I find Web3 is about culture, right? So, there's the gamer culture, which is part of Discord. I know that the two of you use Twitter quite a bit. I think both of you are much funnier on Twitter than on panels. But you know, and it's interesting because I think Discord is kind of where people hang out, but Twitter is kind of the town square for Web3. I mean, I don't know, just sort of on the community thing. I mean, like you're both also doing NFT projects. I'm curious what you're thinking about in the kind of culture you're trying to create in your own community, and how Twitter plays in, and how your Twitter personalities tie into that. I don't know.
Yeah, Twitter for me has been kind of a hit or miss. I think I've really put some thought into some Twitter pieces, like something really thoughtful or analytical about the environment, and it doesn't do well, and then I post one sentence about something stupid, and then my college community just like rides it into oblivion. But yeah, and I think that Twitter has become this marketplace for attention, right? We're all kind of like looking for different forms of attention, and especially with WebAssy, we're very focused on security management, a little soberness in this drunken world of NFTs, especially the past few months. Before the bear market started, it was quite crazy. So trying to get people to realize, okay, there needs to be a little bit more soberness and security built into the systems that we have. And so within our communities, our NFT collection, and it's called a Grimmy. It's kind of a small Grim Reaper to pay homage to our beginnings as a kind of a death tech company working with crypto whales and so on. But even in that space, I mean, these people are looking for like-minded people, right? So the very, very early users we're seeing are NFT flippers or mega NFT traders that really care about the wallets and the estates that they've created, basically. So it's just riding this fine line between, being fun, being attention-grabbing, while also actually trying to build a product that is useful for people and going to help protect the ecosystem that we're in.
That's awesome. And just to add on to that, I think building a culture in Web3 is so important right now because the market is still very early, and I think there's a lot of experimentation being done between relationships between each users or protocol partners, and there's so many different communication channels, but when we all live in different parts of the world and have time differences and can't be online 24/7, how do you build that relationship? And the reason why Sega is creating an NFT is so that we can create that kind of cultural meme and a very a unified visual imagery that everyone can sport on their social media to represent their engagement and interest in Sega. And so even though, say, maybe Joy-san would have a Sega NFT as his profile picture, and there's someone halfway across the world in Brazil that wants to learn more about Sega, without having to read through Sega's multiple documentations, they can identify another Sega community member on Twitter or on Discord, and that is where a lot of the value of these visual identities are.
Interesting. And is because your customers are also going to be in the same community, right? Mm-hmm. In your own Discord, and I mean, how do you expect those communities to sort of interact with each other? I mean, are you trying to use the NFT to create a game that includes both of your customers, or is it just a customer marketing thing?
Yeah, so actually for Sega's NFTs, we're creating something called utility NFTs. In case people didn't hear the talk earlier, Sega is not an NFT project, it is a DeFi protocol. But we have utility NFTs where it actually acts kind of as a membership to a premium version of our product. And so everyone can invest in Sega's products, but when you have the NFT, you can say get access like a limited supply trading strategy that it's so low in supply that I can't distribute to the public, but then for NFT holders, they can access it. They also have rights for, say, exclusive events that we're holding, or like a one-on-one session with me where they can give input on the product. And so we haven't launched our token yet, but with the NFT, you can start influencing the direction of the protocol very early on.
And Micah, yours also gives you some utility too, right? Is it?
Yes, it's actually really similar. It's an access token. So WebAssy is currently in beta, so only our NFT holders are able to access the platform whatsoever. So it's quite gated, but it's helping us to develop our product in a better way so that when we reach the masses, it's a more buttoned up product and it'll work well for everyone.
Does QuantStamp you have a certificate, right? When somebody gets...
Yeah, it's not an NFT, but it is hosted on QuantStamp, so anybody can verify that we have actually looked and secured
I would think QuantStamp would do something on chain.
Yeah, maybe. I gotta admit, like I'm pretty OG when it comes to my involvement in crypto and blockchain. So I don't really have a great understanding of NFTs. I own one NFT, which is actually linked to a physical photo by a famous photographer. And so I actually was more interested in the photo. I just happened to get an NFT. But I was actually pretty psyched to get that as well.
Well, it is interesting how separate the crypto community is with the NFT community, with the game community. And maybe this is something we can talk about as well. But like a lot of game, especially in Japan, I mean gamers, but worldwide, don't like NFTs because they bring kind of corruption. And I know that a lot of Japanese game companies have tried and gotten lashback from their communities. And then they look at Bored Apes and others, or like Animoca, and they're like, wait, why do those guys get to do it, but we don't? But I don't know. I mean, maybe it does so work. I mean, with your gamer community, do you have a view on NFTs, and do you have a plan?
Well, I think that it's still in a very early stage of development in terms of NFTs and gaming. It is really exciting. Like when I heard Yat talk, I was like, wow, oh, that's really, really cool. And so like, I think there is a there, but the tact that we've chosen to go with is, well, let's work on NFTs for workplace and kind of see how the dust settles from a gaming perspective. Gaming is definitely something that we are building into our world and letting our community build on top of our platform, kind of like a Roblox approach. So that's happening. But from an NFT perspective, what we allow today is I mean, besides the stuff I talked about earlier with land and avatar clothing and customizations for your office, for example, the type of community NFTs that we allow are the ability to gift tokens to your teammates based on different things that they accomplish or things about them that you really admire or like. And so we think that there's less potential for controversy there, because you're literally saying like, oh, I really like how Micah is a great team player. So I'm going to gift her or mint this token for her, and I'm going to design it, and it's going to be hers, and whatever value that accrues in the future, it's whatever, right? Like we don't know. But this is a way that we think is a reasonably controversy-free way to dip our toes in and allow people to benefit in a unique way.
Interesting. But you're a DeFi company or project, right? And I find that a lot of DeFi people aren't really into NFTs, or is that just the CEO, or is your community kind of bilingual?
I like NFTs, as you can see on my profile picture. I have a doodle and a couple of other things. But yeah, I think the early DeFi community and the early NFT community were very different demographics. And I think there was a lot of emphasis in the NFT space on building hypes, building brand, building the communication. A lot of the marketing best practices in crypto, I think, was actually born from NFT communities. But on the other side, in terms of building an actual utility on a token, or building, say, compounded returns, building a structure that actually helps you generate financial wealth and like economic stability, that was more on the DeFi side. And so I think people didn't really align on same concepts on the DeFi and NFT side. But now the market adoption curve, we're in much of a later stage. So at the innovator phase, people didn't get along. But now I think we're in a phase where early adopters and early majorities are coming in. And there are a lot of people coming into the Web3 space that are trying to bridge that gap between the people focused on utility and people focused on brand. And now I actually see a lot of DeFi protocols trying to create that marketing best practice that they learn from NFT projects into their DeFi projects as well.
Interesting. And the other community, which Micah and Kay represent, is security. And I remember even in the early days of even just Bitcoin, it was kind of stunning how few security people were interested in blockchain. And even today, I mean, that's why I think QuantStamp did so well. It was just really hard to find people who understood security, who cared at all about blockchain. But I don't know if either of you see it changing. I mean, it's important because the hacks are getting bigger. and that's one of the main concerns people have. But I don't know whether it's the community or just in general. If you have any thoughts on security, maybe either of you.
I think,
Go first.
yeah, I think in Web 2, it's easy for us to kind of overlook all of the security practices that are in place because they've been systems for so long. Like, we can walk on the street because we have driving rules, and we can ride in an airplane because we have security checks that we don't even see happening. We forget about all of these things. And I think it's kind of the same for Web 3, but we skipped that part. So we found the new technology of blockchain, and then we skipped right to things like fun projects and metaverse in a way without kind of creating that seamless like integration layer that users don't have to see or worry about. So this is why we hear things like entire protocols being drained or people losing all of their Bored Apes in their wallets is because we don't have this infrastructure. So I think this bear market is a great opportunity to actually lay that foundation so that when the next wave comes, there's more protection for all of the users. So all of these Web 2, Web 3 curious people are going to join and not have a bad experience and kind of quit it right away, right? So they'll be able to actually join and enjoy it and realize that it's here to stay for the future.
Yeah, I would say it's very difficult because smart contracts are not secure inherently. It's code and it's just made by people. Blockchains are more secure, but even those have been found to be sometimes not so secure. Where I think the real issue is that smart contracts need to be checked before they're deployed. Once they're out in the wild, essentially you can exploit it, and there's very little you can do unless you have a panic button. If your smart contract has a panic button, it's not decentralized. There's probably no point in you doing it on-chain in the first place. And so where I think our mission really is to make sure that people can get access to auditing before they launch their projects. Funding is an issue, but I think more projects are being backed by VCs that care about security as much as we do. And so we're actually working with a lot of funds now that want us to help protect their investments, really. So I think that's a step in the right direction. But yeah, I mean, $1.5 billion of hacks this year, 900 of them in 2 hacks, Wormhole and Ronin. And they didn't realize one for Ronin, which was $600 million. They didn't realize they were hacked for a week. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that it was already a huge project, and they chose not to get it audited by multiple counterparties, which I think it's irresponsible, really. But I think we're so early that it's not necessarily seen as something that people must do. Mm. So protecting your community, I think. Means that you need to care about security, and yeah, digital security is.
What do you think about regulation saying that you must be audited? I mean, I think I know the answer, but I think the natural response from governments is, well, you don't know how to get your act together. We will help you.
I mean, I would love to say that the markets can figure stuff out for themselves, but I think that we're probably beyond that point where regulators are just going to let us have a free pass. That said, I mentioned this in my talk, but Terra was $65 billion. It went to zero, and we're still all here. Crypto is still here. Blockchain is still here. We have Terra 2.0. And yet Lehman Brothers was 48 billion and literally took the world to the brink of collapse. And so, I think we are inherently anti-fragile, and I think that, the fact that it's a lot of communities who are supportive and look out for each other, that's probably a big part of it. But yeah, security is something where, hopefully it just becomes the normal thing to do. Before you deploy something, you ask somebody to check it. And if that happens, then maybe regulation isn't, you don't need to strong-arm people to do that.
Yeah, I mean, and like, Sega, I mean, everybody is going to run up against regulation, right? And I don't know, and I guess earlier in your talk, you're talking about tax as well and things like that. But I mean, what do you feel like? I don't know how much you've interacted with the Japanese, but do you feel like the regulators here are helpful, or that they're trying to understand? I mean, are you hopeful about the regulations here, or I mean, where are you with respect to what you think? And you're not in Japan, right? So. Does that have anything to do with American? Isn't that friendly either, right? I don't know how much you want to talk about it. Maybe you don't want to talk about your regulator relationship.
I think there's value to regulation because at the core of things, regulation exists so that there is order in a way where minimum safety and minimum utility is guaranteed. It's a very nascent market, which means there are projects that don't provide the best value. And if you don't do your own research well enough, you could stumble upon a project that in Web3 terms, we call it a rug, which means it literally just sweeps the rug off of your feet and you can lose money. And not everyone has the time or the resource or the knowledge to understand all these different structures. So yes, I think having regulations surrounding the necessity for security audits to prevent hacks, I think regulations to make sure that Ponzi schemes don't exist, regulations to make sure that if there's like a hack, there's going to be some sort of recourse or remediation. All of that, I think, will be very important. That being said, I think regulation can also cause a lot of operational issues. So if certain countries regulate and other countries don't, that's going to cause so much difficulty for protocols that are trying to create a global product. I think DAOs can definitely be a trigger for community-driven self-regulation. Like, instead of having a country say that you have to get your protocol audited, I think having a societal standard within the Web3 space that says, hey, if you're going to launch a product, you have to get audited by QuantStamp. Otherwise, no one's going to use your product. And actively make that a norm in the culture, I think that is a very natural evolution of how self-regulation could work in the Web3 space.
That's not a bad idea. That's what SOC 2 is, right? You have to. It's not mandated by law, but you kind of have to have it if you want to get any business done. And just coming back to the government thing real quick, my worry is who's going to do it. Who's the individual in the government? When I saw the congressperson not know what Facebook's business model was, I got really worried. And so just thinking about somebody who would have to almost defect from the Web3 community to join the government and be that arbiter, that's a bit worrying.
Yep, and I think the speaker earlier, what's his name, Paul, from CoinDesk. We have some good lobby and also government-related stuff going on in the U.S. I think it's very early here in Japan, but it's hard because I remember Chris, I think Chris Wu, not Chris Wu. Maybe it's Chris Wu, Tim Wu, who was working in the U.S. government, and he was the only person who really understood crypto, but he had Bitcoin and ETH, so he got in conflict of interest, and he wasn't even allowed on the committee, and so he was the only possible thing, and that's the hardest thing. Even in Japan, I'm helping the government, but now that setting up a fund and working with Digital Garage, I'm also very careful not to have too much influence or a formal position. And I think that's the hard part, is that so few people understand this stuff, and it's changing very quickly. And that's the good thing about the bear market, is I think some of the people who might have otherwise gone into money making might end up a little bit more in the policy. So maybe that helps. But just sort of on that, I know, Vish, that you started out not these three are Web3 crypto native. Your company originally wasn't a crypto company, at least when I invested. But you've been kind of steering this thing and learning about Web3. And I think a lot of people here probably have companies, whether they're Web2 or more traditional companies, and they're trying to figure out how it affects their company and how they learn about it. And I remember you were sort of talking to me about all the things you were learning. Do you have any reflections on what was hard? And because you were early in being not on the wagon, right? And now you're sort of here talking at a Web3 conference, but can you tell us a little bit about how you did that?
Sure, yeah, and just because it's hilarious. Joey had invested, and then 2 weeks later I said, we're pivoting. Mm-hmm. So that was pretty funny. Sorry about that. Yeah, honestly, I think it's harder than it can be harder than it seems on first glance, because there's a number of stakeholders that have to be aligned. So it's romantic almost to think, oh yeah, I'm just going to pivot the company and it's glory and it's going to be all good. But then the nuts and bolts of it is, well, you've got all the investors that you need to realign. There's a whole bunch of teammates who signed up for a particular mission, and like dropping that bomb on them is like kind of nuts. And so seeing how the dust settles and who can align with the new mission, I think that was probably the hardest part. But then, of course, there's the big beast of learning about an emerging technology. So I went and I attended the Game Dev conference in San Francisco in March. And one of the things that struck me as I walked around on the exhibition floor hall was like, wow, like 95% of these companies aren't going to be here in like 3 weeks, or like maybe, because it's like they're dealing with 2 layers of risk. The first layer of risk is like the risk that we all take when we start a company. It's like, okay, well, are we going to find product market fit? Is there going to be a niche? Are we going to like wiggle our way into that that area that, product market fit? But then there's like a second layer of risk that Web3 companies face, which is like, am I building on infrastructure that's going to just be gone in like tomorrow, right? And there's like, it isn't just your foundational infrastructure, but it's like all the different pieces of the infrastructure and the currency that you use and the tokens and yada, yada, yada. And it's like, I think that part is really hard too. So you have to almost be like really good at forecasting or just know a lot about a lot to be able to make good decisions here. And I think that's been one of the most interesting parts. It's like you can't always justify your decisions with all your teammates unless you sit down and have protracted conversations with each of them, which is also tough. So I think if anybody here is thinking about doing that, I think just, go somewhere where you can be alone for like 5 months and just read and learn about stuff and try stuff. I think you'll have a better shot if you do that.
I guess none of you have pivoted, right? I guess QuantStamp is doing what QuantStamp. I guess the thing is you probably are doing more investments and new. I guess and the insurance thing is new, right? But that's additive along a trajectory you already had, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because we actually see all of these very, very early stage ideas and innovation. And 2017 was, hey, let's put it on a blockchain and see what happens. And this time around, I think is like, hey, let's look at what happens in the real world and put it on the blockchain and see if it works. And we see a lot of that. And so thankfully, we get a good idea and sense of what's going to work and what's not. Tokenomics, we've seen so many different versions of the tokenomics model that I think we're in a good situation to say, oh, this is going to be hot, or this is probably not going to work. And so investment is parcel of that. And for us, like we look at something, we see if it's safe. Obviously, we check that it's safe. And then putting insurance on that, we risk our own capital as well to insure something. And so there is that element of due diligence, and especially the technical side, but also the business side. So that's been an interesting kind of development from just reading line after line of code and seeing if it's secure or not.
Micah, you've done security audits on your thing. I mean, security is a really important thing. And I mean, is insurance part of your, how do you build the trust? What's your plan to build the trust with the customers?
Yeah, so we're starting with security audits for sure. We have one with QuantStamp coming up in a few months, and we have had a few in the middle. And the whole security angle is changing. So there's also individual security auditors that are well known in the ecosystem, so they'll do security audits for you too. But even with that, even behind the scenes for our company, we have to integrate things like a time lock. So we launch code and then it has to wait 24 to 48 hours to actually get pushed to the blockchain. This is so we kind of have that backup. Like if we need to pull it back or we need to kind of cancel any changes, we have a little bit of buffer time. And in terms of deploying code too, we use a multi-sig. So multiple people have to deploy code, so not one person has it. So we have all of these layers built in, but I think truly just having the ecosystem support and having key players supporting WebAC, both publicly and privately, is going to really help us with community-driven growth and trust within the community too. But just, I think being super careful in everything we deploy, having it be thoughtful and functional is going to be key for us. One mistake could just kind of ruin the trust that we've built as a company so far.
Interesting. And so, so just given all of what we've talked about, what are the couple of things that you think needs to happen for Web3 to be successful, or do you think it'll just get incrementally successful? What's the highest leverage thing that you're hoping is going to happen? I don't know if you have anything like that. Or something that you think is broken now that you wish would just get fixed.
I heard somebody talking. I think there's two other speakers here that have a company that deal with this, but I think just user experience is probably the simplest.
It's horrible, yeah.
Exactly, and it's like, well, if you want to onboard something into if you want to onboard people into something, then nice little short travel steps, I think, is probably.
Why is it so bad, do you think?
Well, I mean, my intuition is like, well, look at who built it, right? It's like all of us nerds. And so I think if we want it to be mass adopted, which I think would be very good, given all the good that we know about Web3 as a concept, then we just need to do a better job of communicating. And communicating in this sense is user experience, right?
I mean, security's still really bad. Are you guys going to fix it? I mean, the two of you going to fix it, do you think?
I mean, I think our mission is ongoing, and it's clear. You know, we are trying to make the space safe for everyone. Unfortunately, you know, I think that because it's so complex, and I agree, like the UI is very difficult and overly probably, you know, for people that don't want to remember their seed phrase or whatever it is, or even know where to even store it. It's still too difficult to really safely own crypto. There are so many like holes that you can like fall into. But I think in essence, you know, the best that we can do is try and support the infrastructure for people building apps and producing new projects. And that's really all, you know, I think we can do as a company. But yeah, propagating that kind of safety message is what we do all the time, wherever we go.
I mean, UI is a big part of security, right? Because if
Yeah.
you can't see a hole, you'll fall in it. But I mean, how much of your audits involve UI? Or is it more just the code?
Yeah, to be honest, you know, we don't really necessarily deal with the UI, but you know, in our due diligence, we try to look at all aspects of it. If there is a working, you know, model, we will try and look at it and, you know, test it for ourselves. But it is difficult. I mean, our main expertise is obviously making sure the smart contracts are safe.
I think the key success factor to future protocols and projects is also about how to think about the early adopters that are coming in, or the early majority that is coming in. So I think the days of innovators are over, and early adopters are now like the mass in the market. And as the community grows, you know, security is important. Being able to have like a nice user experience is important. But my personal passion space is also in just localizing products to different geographies in the world. I think so much of the growth in crypto has been in English-speaking communities. And for people like us who speak English, it's been easy to obtain the information and adopt the technology. But you know, I am Japanese, and I feel very passionate about growing the Web3 communities in Japan. I unfortunately don't live in Japan right now, but you know, I think that more projects should be able to have, say, a Japanese community manager or a Japanese UI, so that people who are interested in the product but may not necessarily speak English can access the product. And I think this should happen in more different countries around the world.
Yeah, just on the UI note, I think what we lack is that we're so crypto native, and a lot of people in this room are very used to crypto tech that we don't necessarily think about how difficult it is for someone who's more Web 2 native to be able to approach anything in crypto. So within my circles, actually, most of my friends are not in crypto at all. So if you show an anthropology major a crypto product, even a smart anthropology major, they don't know where to go at all. And that's nothing against like liberal arts or anything, but they just aren't in this bubble that we're all kind of swimming in, right? And so with these, like with security and the future of blockchain, I can kind of see it going two ways. Like one path is centralization, right? Just kind of going back into something we're comfortable with, like doing just Coinbase, someone else taking care of everything. Or kind of a group work, like everyone's in it together and everyone's putting in the effort to make the environment safer. So this is things like QuantStamp and Ledger and Webacy and all these different players coming in to cover different holes and gaps in the ecosystem. And that's another way that they can find success. But there's definitely a couple different paths that we have to go down, and we're kind of playing along all of them right now.
Can I just add though that like I completely agree with everything you guys have all said, and I'll just add, Joey, earlier you said this is just a matter of time, and like we're almost in like the Cambrian explosion period right now, and it's like unfortunately just a whole bunch of things have to try and die, and then after all of that happens, then I think we'll get a better sense of like the bloodbath isn't over.
So do you recommend your anthropology major to play around now or to wait until this is over?
I think everyone should try to learn as much as possible. It's up to everyone's comfort level. But yeah, I think you try to get anyone, like your parents, to try to do anything in Web3, and it's just super confusing.
Yeah.
And so there's a huge learning curve in the space right now.
But everyone should try and have an opinion.
I think blockchain goes beyond like 10x leverage on BitMEX or something, and so now I think there are things people can do that are fun, and get their exposure that way.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everybody. ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much, all the panelists and 江藤さん。パネリストの皆様、伊藤さん、ありがとうございます。
Thank you, panelists. Thank you so much.